Stay tuned for the Sean Casey Show, a podcast for Patriots. Welcome back to the Sean Casey Show, a podcast for Patriots. I am Sean Casey. This is where the resistance meets each and every episode, dropping 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And, of course, the Casey commentary, which is on Saturdays. My apologies for no episode on Monday, as I had a family emergency and could not make the episode on that particular day. But we're back here, and we'll catch up to some lost ground. Don't worry about it. Joining us in the battle as the resistance is fighting the march to Marxism, our executive producer, Joe Hosny Armacost.
Good to be here, guys. Hope you all had a nice weekend. Yeah,
we did. Thank you so much. And our associate producer and researcher, Michelle Drusella, otherwise known as Double X. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Michelle.
Hey.
All right. Everything is ready to roll here.
Everything?
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope you had a great weekend as well. Some of the headlines that we are looking at here today, of course, is that Lori Lightfoot lost her election in Chicago. First time an incumbent since they changed the voting process in Chi-Town has lost.
Damn.
And I think she was lost. She was an absolute
Thank
disaster.
God. Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that maybe, just maybe, voters in big cities are starting to awaken. Because we see she loses re-election. We've had Chesa Boudin, the San Francisco radical DA. He got recalled. They almost got Gascon in Los Angeles, but they screwed up the signatures. They almost got the mayor of New Orleans, the murder capital of the United States, but they screwed up those signatures, or something was funny with those. We have Marilyn Mosby in Baltimore. We broadcast behind the blue lines in the blue state, behind enemy lines, I should say, in the blue state of Maryland, where she she lost her election, and she's getting ready to stand a federal trial come this November. We have Kim Gardner in St. Louis, that the Missouri Attorney General is asking to be removed because she won't follow the law. So, again, things are happening. Things are moving. I think Americans are waking up that we don't like Biden's America. We don't like this rampant crime. Our education system's falling apart. Our infrastructure crumbling. We don't like it when chemical hazard trains derail and nobody shows up to help the American people. And I was thinking about that for just a second. Imagine.
I know.
Imagine if every governor, if every candidate, if every American just to contribute just $5 to the people of East Palestine, this whole thing could be taken care of. Why aren't we taking care of our own? Why are we sending money overseas to Ukraine? Janet Yellen shows up in Ukraine the other day with another $1.25 billion for that war, which, by the way, they now want our sons and daughters to fight. More on that coming up in this episode. It just doesn't make any sense to me. This all could be resolved, and unfortunately, the people of East Palestine, they're going to be suffering for years to come. We have to watch them very carefully for cancers and other ill health effects. It's just, this is supposed to be the United States of America. For God's sake, we put a man on the moon, and now we're headed to Mars. We can't take care of our own people in our own country? Shame on us. I had to get that off my chest. All right. We have our Founding Fathers quote of the day, John Adams. We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Boy, is that the truth. Because when we don't have morality, when we get away from God, that's when we have trouble. That's when we see problems like we're experiencing right now in the country. I don't know if you have seen the awakenings at Asbury University. Have you seen this story?
I have, yes.
It's very powerful. The revivals, where we have young students in college basically leading this charge, wanting to reconnect with God. And we're seeing it not just in Asbury in Kentucky, but in Santa Monica, California, and other pockets where we're having these revivals and these awakenings where people want to connect and are finding God or finding their way back to God again. I think it's important for this country to do that. And the number 3 movie at the box office this week was a movie called, I think it was Jesus Saves or Jesus is Hero. I can't remember what the exact title is. But it was a true story about what happened in the late 60s and 70s with the hippie movement. Of course, a lot of the hippies that started were anti-war. That's what started the Haight-Ashbury movement, et cetera. But a significant number of hippies went the other way. They found God in there was a pastor that was losing his denomination. I think his name was Chuck Smith. And he was able to open his doors, and he had a bunch of, as you might imagine, in the 1960s, early 70s, a bunch of very traditional Christian, stiff upper lip. They looked at the hippies as, you got to be kidding me. But the pastor, knowing that his flock was fleeting, opened up his doors to the hippie Christian movement, and the rest, as they say, is history. Incredibly, and it spread all over the country at that time. And I think we need another movement like that here in the country now. But it stars Kelsey Grammer, he stars as the pastor in number 3 at the box office.
Yay.
I'll get the name for you here in a second. I know it has Jesus in the title, but I can't remember if it's Jesus Revolution. That's what it is.
Okay.
The Jesus Revolution. That's what they call it. All right, so check that out. All right, so the big stories of the last several days, of course, you've been following closely, and that is of the COVID confessions. And as we have basically been consistent on this show from day one, we've always said we believed that this virus was engineered. It was man-made. It was man-made in China. It was man-made through gain-of-function research. It was paid for by the United States government. That's us, by people like Ralph Barrick and Peter Daszak and Tony Fauci et al. And then in turn, we believe, or I believe, it was released intentionally because the Chinese were getting their clocks cleaned by Donald Trump with the tariffs, and their economy was going south, and they needed a distraction. They needed something to stop the Western economy, and they needed to get Trump out of office. And I think they killed 2 birds with 1 stone with COVID-19. So that has been my position from day one. It was released intentionally. Nobody in the government is saying that right now, but we are finding more and more people in the government saying that it is a lab leak. They're getting away from the wet market and the bat story and the pangolin story and the rest of the animal jumping to human species. We now know this is I think, even when you have several government agencies saying it, I think they're slowly coming in that direction. I don't know if they'll come as far as I am, but we'll wait and see. One of the reasons why I believe that is there is a virologist by the name of Dr. Li Meng Yan, and she was a researcher, a virologist in China, that she was working at some of these military labs run by the PLA and the CCP, doing bioweapons research and flu and things of that nature. She did eventually escape to Hong Kong, where she is blowing the whistle on what the CCP and the PLA are up to. She was on with Tucker Carlson the other night, and she has confirmed that COVID-19 did indeed come from the Wuhan lab.
Of course, it was not an accident, and maybe for people who don't have this kind of biosafety lab 3 or 4 experience on coronavirus, maybe it's easy for them to accept the accident and lab leak. However, I'm the scientist working in such lab using coronavirus, and I can tell you, based on the protocol and also the other surveillance system, it will be impossible for the lab leak accidentally happened in such lab and caused the Wuhan outbreak and also the pandemic. So definitely now we just reached to the first step. It was from China's lab, and we need to pursue the truth of origin, and we need to keep going on.
Yeah, so again, no accident. And you'll hear in this clip, I think, something that I have never really heard before, and this is an interesting theory, that the first outbreak, if you will, may have been an accident, but then when the Chi-Coms saw how high the transmission rate was, they went, gotcha. Once again, there's Dr. Li Meng Yan on the Tucker Carlson show.
Based on the evidence and the source I have, that the lab, the virus was intentionally brought out of this strict lab and released in the community. However, I don't think the outbreak in Wuhan was intentional. I would say it was because CCP government and military scientists underestimate the transmissibility. That's why finally it got out of control and caused a local outbreak. However, we should know that CCP government intentionally to let it go all over the world.
Yeah, and that's the key point. They let Chinese people, knowing they had a massive outbreak, spread this all over the world. People that were visiting Wuhan, people that were living in Wuhan, they were sent out all over the world once they saw how high of a transmission rate they had with this. Now, well, side note, Dr. Yan's mother is currently in custody, being held by the CCP, so she's got to be very careful, what she says. I think she's already on the edge of danger. So you have that, and then this week, the Department of Energy came out, of all people, and said that they were confident, although they said it was low confidence, but they were confident that this was attributed to a lab leak, not the wet market. They become the second federal agency to agree with that. The first one was the FBI. An FBI director and swamp rat, Christopher Wray, was on special report with Bret Baier last night on the Fox News channel, and he let go with a very interesting statement. Here's FBI Director Chris Wray.
The FBI has for quite some time now assessed that the origins of the pandemic are most likely a potential lab incident in Wuhan. Let me step back for a second. The FBI has folks, agents, professionals, analysts, virologists, microbiologists, et cetera, who focus specifically on the dangers of biological threats, which include things like novel viruses like COVID, and the concerns that in the wrong hands, some bad guys, a hostile nation state, a terrorist, a criminal, the threats that those could pose. So here you're talking about a potential leak from a Chinese government-controlled lab that killed millions of Americans, and that's precisely what that capability was designed for.
What do you notice about Christopher Wray there?
Well, first off, why now? You've known this for a long. Why now? Are you kidding me?
And a friendly, because he thinks Bret Baier is friendly, I just, to me, he was like nonchalant.
Like it was all figured out beforehand what he was going to say.
You're talking about, and again, whether you believe the figure death with COVID or death from COVID. With COVID worldwide is 6 million. From COVID is probably somewhere in the 1.2 million range. In the United States, it's 1 million and probably about 250,000. But in any event, people died.
These guys knew this from day one, dude. They knew it was from Wuhan. They knew it. This is crap. This is a CYA effort. That's about it.
Now all of a sudden they have trouble with China, and it was a lab leak.
Yeah, here come the spy balloons. Mm-hmm. Here come the Chinese, kissing Putin's backside, offering lethal aid in Ukraine. And now all of a sudden, we need a bad guy. We need a bad guy. We need somebody that we can point to, and it's been Putin, but that's not really whipping the American people up all that well. So now we got to shift gears, and now we've got, and by the way, we got a presidential election coming up next year. So Joe Biden, I'm thinking he'll wag the dog. What do the American people do? They rally in times of war. They rally usually around the commander-in-chief, be it FDR, be it George Bush, during Afghanistan, or whoever. And I think, I hate to sound so cynical about that, but I've seen too much.
Right.
And I've lived this before.
I have to agree.
Admiral Kirby is the mouthpiece for Joe Biden over the Pentagon. He was asked by a reporter, and the media is starting to kind of, sort of awaken. I mean, they'll ask a question here or there, but they're not going in for the kill. I don't know if they ever will again, but they can have these guys on the ropes, and they choose to let them up. So here's a reporter asking Kirby, does Biden believe or approve of gain-of-function research? This is a fascinating answer.
Does the president believe that this type of gain-of-function research is proven?
He believes that it's important to help prevent future pandemics, which means he understands that there has to be legitimate scientific research into the sources or potential sources of pandemics so that we understand it, so that we can prevent them, and we can prevent them from happening, obviously. But he also believes, and this is why he wants the whole of government effort here to understand it, that research has to be done, it must be done in a safe and secure manner and as transparent as possible to the rest of the world so people know what's going on. So I think that's a fancy way of saying yes.
Yeah, you could have just said yes. Yeah, because he does. Remember, gain-of-function research, if you're not familiar with it, basically they take a toxic and or deadly virus and they make it even more toxic or more deadly. And there's two reasons for that. Reason one is to have a vaccine or a cure should this thing ever get out into the public, or two, use it as a bioweapon. And then if you're going to use it as a bioweapon, you want the cure or remedy for your own people. All right, so that's the reason why it's done.
But why in
banned.
China?
It was banned. Yeah, it was banned during the Obama regime, and then they found a way around it. Old Tony Fauci, and of course his co-partners in crime, Dr. Collins, rather, and Peter Daszak, Ralph Barrick in North Carolina, and others. We know that from his whistleblower, Dr. Andrew Huff, and among others. We know that from an email chain that Tony Fauci was involved with from one of the researchers that said, it appears to me that this virus has been engineered. Okay, that's not jumping from bat or pangolin or civet to humans. It was weaponized. It was gain-of-function research. I think where the research should be conducted is into Tony Fauci. He has increased his personal wealth from $7.5 million to $12.5 million during a pandemic. That's
I'm doing pretty good there, Sean.
Yeah, Tony.
I'm making out like a fat rat, and not a lab rat either.
You cashed in pretty good. The rest of us are taking pay cuts. Remember the personal, the PPP loans and everything else, and you cashed in big time.
I got a knack for that kind of thing, man.
Yeah, you do. Tony Fauci, he made money. And by the way, Tony says he didn't see any data that would support the lab leak theory. Right. He didn't see any data that would support the bat or the pangolin theory, yet he espoused that. So
Again, why did we do it in China, though? Why can't we do it, we have a very
Fort Detrick,
safe...
right here in Maryland. There are military biosafety level 4 military labs where this should be done. You do not give it to the CCP. But they were doing this in Ukraine as well.
I know. That's what I was going to say.
So, that's another hot spot we'll get to in just a second.
A really hot spot right now.
We've got some really either people who just don't care or some idiots, as Trump used to call them. These people are stupid. They've given away the candy store. America's in bad straits again, and we're going to need Donald Trump to pull our bacon out of the fire. Then there's the media. The media has been completely co-opted and corrupted by the radical left, and they are basically crapping all over the lab leak theory.
Just weeks ago, Dr. Anthony Fauci rejected the conspiracy that coronavirus was man-made in a lab in Wuhan, China.
Both scientists and the U.S. intelligence community agree that this coronavirus was not man-made. That is not a possibility.
Really just take a critical scientific look at the evidence that's available. Our belief is that it's much more likely this came from an animal.
You said the overwhelming amount of evidence indicates that's a lab leak. I believe most card-carrying viral phylogenists and molecular virologists would disagree with you.
Phylogenist? What the hell was that? Was that a Biden word?
It sounds a little dirty to me,
Maybe that's the reason why Tony retired. Who knows? But the media, again, look, how many of us were, I can count myself, I'm sure you guys and others, that were deplatformed, that dare mention hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. By the way, Dr. Simone Gold is going to join us next week on the show. She was a frontline doctor that was leading the charge. Remember, she was the one that was arrested inside the Capitol on J6. Boys, her story is fascinating. She'll be with us here next week on the podcast. So be looking forward to that. But we were all silenced, censored, deplatformed, shadow banned. Should you bring any of this stuff up about the lab leak or any of these alternative treatments? Because the big pharma train was heading down the tracks and nobody was going to stop it unless, of course, they redirected it to East Palestine. So over the weekend, I don't know if you caught Saturday Night Live, Woody Harrelson, who is a liberal, he's a card-carrying lefty, but even some liberals like Dr. Wolf, who's been on this podcast, Andrew Berenson of the New York Times, Bobby Kennedy Jr., even they are putting their Americans first and their identity politics second. I want to give him, and I'll give Woody Harrelson credit on this one. Part of his monologue during Saturday Night Live, he went after Big Pharma, and of course, I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was telling the truth, but the left, they were not amused.
Hey, so the movie goes like this. The biggest drug cartels in the world get together and buy up all the media and all the politicians and force all the people in the world to stay locked in their homes. And people can only come out if they take the cartel's drugs and keep taking them over and over. I threw the script away. I mean, who is going to believe that crazy idea?
It's really like nervous laughter in the audience. Like,
yeah,
where's he going with this? Are we supposed to laugh at this? Are we supposed to applaud? Oh, we better sit on our hands. Well, Twitter went off on Woody Harrelson. They just then he sat down with Bill Maher after and did it again and doubled down. So good for you. Stick to your guns. The more people who speak up and speak out against this, the better we're going to be as a country. Because here's the thing I took away from this. I will. I won't say never, but I will hardly ever believe anything my government tells me again when it comes to something regarding public health.
Nope. That's
I don't
sad
trust
to say.
them. They've lied too much. They've lied about the masks. They've lied about the jabs. They've lied about alternative treatments. They've lied about how many people died with or from COVID. They lied when they told people to go back in nursing homes, and nothing would happen when they killed, tens of thousands of people in New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Michigan. I'm sorry. I just don't believe our elected officials.
Well,
I believe Donald
what.
Trump. I think Trump will tell us the truth. It may hurt sometimes, but I don't know about you guys, but I mean, where do you go? I can't believe the media, and I can't believe the government.
And I'll go as far as to say I'm 100% in not listening or not believing the government. For the past couple of years now, everything has been a lie. Yep. Everything. So, all right, why should I believe them? And I'm not alone.
And I think we're being lied to about Ukraine as well. So we'll get to that.
Sean, everything.
Everything. Yeah. So when they get in trouble, the government goes to DNCBS and Stephen Colbert. Remember when he was? I think we did the dancing syringes skit.
Yes.
When he was. They were out there. They're pushing. We got to get more people boosted. I mean, there are emails. There's an email thread back and forth between members of the government and the coronavirus task force and Colbert. We got to get more people boosted. We got to convince them. So he goes on with the dancing syringes, and that's trying to get. And remember, he had the thing with Fauci as well. They went into a drugstore together and got it. So they always call on Colbert to do their dirty work. So Colbert was in the mocking mode once he heard of the lab leak theory.
Another surprising development this weekend. The Department of Energy released a new report saying a lab leak is the most likely origin of the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, there it is. Chinese wet markets, you're off the hook. Let's order a round of pangolin poppers for the table. I love a nice plate of wet apps. Now, if you're can we get some civet fingers, please? Now, if, like me, you're wondering why the Department of Energy is the one making this judgment, it's because that agency oversees a network of U.S. national laboratories, some of which conduct advanced biological research. No. Bad energy department. No biolabs until you finish building your electric car charging stations. Stay in your lane.
Yeah, let's forget about the pandemic where millions of people died and are suffering. Let's get right back to climate change because that's what we need to do. You know, they're kind of related because they're both about power and control. I think this first round of the pandemic was a test run. It was to probe our defenses. You know, like Chinese spy balloons and spy buoys are doing off the Arctic in Canada now. They've gone from balloons to buoys. But they're constantly probing our defenses. And this was a great way to see, A, how the government reacted, and B, how Americans reacted. And we did not pass the test.
No.
And we failed miserably.
We passed their test.
Yeah.
See how we act.
Yeah, because they, you know, in China, they just lock you down. They lock you right in your house, lock you in your apartment. They deliver whatever scraps of food they think you should be eating this week. And you know what? In China, where there's 1 billion people, they don't care if they lose 10 million, 50 million, 100 million people. They don't care.
In the bucket. There's
a new Chinese restaurant, Lockdown Louie's here in Maryland. Yeah.
Lockdown Louie's.
And they serve all kind of crap. You just don't know what it is.
They got the special today, Who Flung Flu. All right, on to Chairman Joe. I don't know if you caught his interview with David Muir of ABC last Friday, but it was revealing on several fronts. One, of course, he says questioning his age is legitimate. Two, he deferred to his wife regarding whether he's going to run again. We'll get to that in just a second. But he did say that for now, no F-16s are not needed right now for Ukraine. He would not say whether if Xi gave lethal aid to Putin, China to Russia, whether that would be crossing the line in Ukraine, although he did hint at sanctions. You know what I think should be done to China right now is their most favored nation trade status should be yanked. You got to send them a message. And you got to send a message to these American corporations like the NBA and Apple and others that are that's bowing and capitulating to the CCP. Again, that experiment, which was started under Nixon with détente, that if you open up China to Western businesses and Western companies, they will be a productive and peaceful player on the world stage. Sorry, that experiment has failed, and it has failed miserably. China is an adversary. China is right now heading towards a full-blown enemy of the United States of America, more so than Russia or any other country. Iran, of course, is also a threat. We're being told now they'll have enough fissile material, that's enough nuclear plutonium or whatever, to make a bomb in 12 days. But they do not have a way to deliver that bomb as of yet. And that's unsettling. We were told repeatedly by Obama that they would never get it. And, of course, Trump was leading down that track. Remember, he canceled the Iran nuke deal.
Yes.
Then Biden came back in and reinstated it. And here we are, just 12 days away from them having enough plutonium to make a nuclear device.
Thanks, Biden.
Yeah.
Let's go.
And so we've got that. We've got North Korea launching ICBMs into the Sea of Japan. And then we have the war in Ukraine and China, which is constantly now pushing the envelope. And I think we'll get to the Ukraine thing here in just a second. But one thing that Biden did say, he was asking, Amir asked him a question about his poll numbers. 71% of the country think it's going in the wrong track. Your poll numbers still, your approval rating is less than your disapproval rating. You're underwater. You're upside down. Why do you think that is?
Our latest ABC News poll shows 4 in 10 Americans say they're worse off than when you were elected. Only 16% said they were better off. So why is that? Why aren't Americans feeling this?
Well, look, I think it goes well beyond the economy. Think about it. You make the news. I mean, you interview for the news. Can you think of anything they turn on the television and go, God, that makes me feel good? Almost anything. Everything is in the negative.
Yeah, it's the media's fault. Shoot the messenger, blame the messenger. It's all. It's not my policies. It's not the fact that I wiped out all the Trump executive orders, killed the Keystone Pipeline, opened up our southern borders. And on Friday we've got an incredible video to show you from a mother that lost 2 sons to fentanyl poisoning. It is heart-wrenching. But this is all Biden's fault. All what's happening on the world stage, the fact that Putin invaded Ukraine, yeah, you blame Putin, but Biden enabled him. So these are all his policies. That's why his numbers have gone south. But the big question was, are you going to run again in 2024? And he has been playing coy with it. But Jill, who was in Kenya, she was answering a question regarding, is your husband going to run for re-election? And she responded in this fashion.
Well, he says he's not done. He's not finished what he started. And that's what's important. And I think, look at all that Joe has done, has accomplished. I mean, he brought us out of the chaos. And he did that. He was elected because people wanted steady leadership. And I think they saw that in Joe, and they saw his character. They saw his integrity. And he came into office, he knew, what he wanted to do. And he knew people were suffering from the pandemic. And I was going and passing out food boxes. People were starving. They didn't have food. And people were afraid. There was such fear. And so he came up with the American Rescue Plan to help kids get back to schools. And the things that bringing broadband to all the United States so that all kids have internet, building up schools, getting our kids back to schools, building our infrastructure. Look at our roads and our bridges. Look at healthcare and what we've done. I mean, people are just starting to see all of this come to fruition because it was voted on before. And the CHIPS Act, that we will now build the microchips here in the United States that we really import from other countries. I mean, he's done so much. And Darlene, he's just not done.
Okay. So is all that's left at this point is just to figure out a time and place for the announcement?
Pretty much.
Where were you guys passing out help in East Palestine?
Right.
Instead of actively staying away from that area.
Well, here's the thing, too. I was going to say she was there. She said I was passing out food boxes. Well, Americans need food now. We've got a crisis on our hand, a food shortage. Where is she? Where are they?
She's full of prunes like her husband.
Oh, yeah.
The problem is she is not cognitively impaired. So this is malice aforethought. Again, she's directly lying to the American people. There wasn't any chaos. Yes, there was a pandemic, but that was government created. It was government run. It was government sponsored. Trump did try to get us back on track with Operation Warp Speed. He didn't develop the vaccines, but he he gave the green light to the medical community to go out there and do whatever you can. Antiviral treatments. But again, a lot of this was poo-pooed by Tony Fauci, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin. Remember, Trump was pushing all that.
Right.
And there was no chaos.
They were mocking him about it.
Yeah, exactly. And this idea, the American Rescue Plan. Yeah, she drove us in $10 trillion more in debt with a lot of this stuff. By the way, we're now finding out that a lot of these pandemic funds were misspent, were fraudulently. In fact, there were billions of dollars in unemployment checks that went to prisoners in California under the new labor secretary that was just nominated, Julie Su, in California after Marty Walsh left in this administration. So there was all sorts of waste, fraud, and abuse in this chaos. And I'm sorry, leadership, he has integrity. Again, her whole family, including Hunter Biden, James Biden, Frank Biden, and her husband, have been skimming off the top from Ukraine and other worlds. She's living in the lap of luxury. She doesn't want to give it up. So that's what Jill Biden is all about. Now, look, I'm hard on Biden, as everybody knows, but I do draw the line at some of these criticisms. Tulsi Gabbard, I do like Tulsi. I don't like her stance on social issues. I think she's a social liberal, more of a fiscal conservative, and she is a veteran, so I thank her for her service to the country. She's a former Democrat lawmaker from Hawaii. She was on the other night, and she made a comparison that I think we as a nation have got to stop doing this. Let's listen to what she said first, and then we can analyze. Once again, here's Tulsi Gabbard.
See, what we're seeing here is their philosophy, identity politics. And this is one of the main reasons why I left the Democratic Party, because you're seeing how their agenda of identity politics is directly undermining the traditional democratic values that were expressed so beautifully and clearly by Dr. Martin Luther King, that we should judge each other not based on the color of our skin, but based on our character. And yet, as you have displayed here over and over with example after example, they're proud to be judging people, hiring people, selecting people based on race, which is really, let's be clear how serious of a problem this is. It's based on genetics, race, based on your blood, your genes. And where do we see that connection? Well, these are the very same geneticist core principles embodied by Nazism and Adolf Hitler.
All right, so I think you lose the argument once you make that comparison to the Nazis and Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler, started a world war. He then tried to exterminate an entire race and ethnicity of the Jewish people. Over 6 million Jewish people were exterminated in the concentration camps and the ovens in Germany and in Poland. And it is something that I just think that Joe Biden is the worst president in my lifetime. I think he's dangerous to our national security, but I don't think the comparisons, I just think you lose the argument. And we need to stop doing that.
Right.
Should there be somebody that comes down the pipe that is comparable? Yeah, okay, I'm all for it. But I just think, there are a number of ways you can make your point without the Nazi-Hitler comparison.
Right. I think she could have stopped at eugenics,
Right.
possibly, because I do see eugenics, I call it 2.0 in this country. But I think she shouldn't have gone all the way to comparing him to Hitler, because that just makes us, or whatever, her line of thinking as bad as the Dems calling Trump Hitler.
Right. Absolutely. There was one Hitler,
Right.
and there was one Stalin, and
That's right.
so on and so forth. So,
No, yeah.
Again, there are other things you can say without making those unfortunate
Right.
comparisons. This, to me, was one of the most troubling clips I've seen in the last several days. We've already given Ukraine $113 billion, and most of that is not in cash, it's security assistance, so on and so forth. But that's more than any other country, combined from Europe or NATO, and it is in security assistance in the form of Patriot missiles, in the form of rocket launchers, things of that nature, bullets, ammunition, so much so that we're running low on this. But that's not enough. And Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, who, by the way, corrupt government, corrupt country, so much so that that's the reason why I think we're in there trying to clean it up. And it's estimated it's going to cost upwards of $300 or $400 billion to rebuild Ukraine in a kind of Marshall Plan. And guess who probably carry the expense of that is probably going to be the United States, if the war to end today. But there's no sign that the war is going to end today. And after Zelensky requested M1 Abrams tanks and got them, after Zelensky has requested F-16s, and so far we haven't sent any. But here, I just, before we came in to record the show today, there were 16 members of Congress that have signed a letter urging President Biden to provide Ukraine with F-16s. No. Okay? They're escalating this. And mostly Democrats, some Republicans. I'll name them. Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin is one of those Republicans, as well as August Pfluger of Texas, Don Bacon of Nebraska, and Rob Whitman of Virginia. This is just, they're looking to escalate. But the tanks and the fighter jets are not enough for President Zelensky. Here is what he said yesterday to the United States and to the people of the United States.
The U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war, and they will have to fight. Because it's NATO that we're talking about, and they will be dying, God forbid, because it's a horrible thing.
No.
All right, so now there's the call. There's the call for U.S. boots on the ground combat troops, because he said you will be fighting and you will die. For what?
For what? For
What vital interest is it? And I feel bad for the Ukrainian people. There have been war crimes committed there. There have been atrocities, but this is Europe's fight. We can provide assistance, and we have, more so than any other country, but not one American soldier, well, let's face it, they're already there as advisors, training, and so on and so forth, but not one American combat soldier should be sent to Ukraine.
But send your sons and daughters.
Yeah, send your sons and daughters. Like, our sons and daughters are dying in this fight. This is a fight for freedom. You need to send yours. Well, guess what? Many of our sons and daughters fought in World War I, in World War II, to pull your fat out of the fire, and again, to stop the advance of communism in the police action called the Korean War, in the Vietnam War, and in Afghanistan, where we were directly hit. But that helped save the world from terrorism. And I'm tired of watching presidents violate the Constitution. Only Congress can declare war. You need to contact your member of Congress, be it a representative, be it a senator, and remind them of their constitutional oath. Do not let Joe Biden goad us into another foreign war. Donald Trump, first modern president not to start a war or to get us involved in another war. Here comes Joe Biden, the neocons, the swamp rats, and the industrial military complex. They're itching for another war. So why? We can have 50,000 more names on a wall in D.C., or we can have, again, another 20 years of maimed and dead soldiers from Afghanistan. What is our vital interest? We have not been attacked by Russia.
This strange twist of fate. We've got a lot of old hippy-dippies in there right now who were going the exact same way, and it's taken them this long to get into a position of power, and now they're doing the same thing they complained about.
Yeah. So again, I'm tired of it. Congress is the only body that is authorized to declare war. And the last time we did it, remember, World War II. The day after Pearl Harbor, on December 8, 1941, that's when we declared war. We've not declared war since.
Well, and there's Congress is deliberating about, extending the draft to women.
Right.
So they'll not only have, men.
Well, there is no draft now.
Right.
But there is a selective service that you have to, able-bodied men, 18 or over, do register. In the selective service, should they reimpose or reinstate the draft.
Right.
But now they want to expand that to women as well.
Yes.
Just unbelievable. And for what? Bill Gates tells us that, Ukraine, as a country, as a government, it's one of the most corrupt in the world. Once again, here's Mr. Microsoft.
The Ukrainian government is one of the worst in the world. Corrupt, controlled by a few rich people. I mean, really unfortunate for the people in Ukraine. Ukraine has better agricultural land than the United States does. I mean, it is the breadbasket of Europe. It's an incredible location.
Yeah, so there you have it. It is something that they're corrupt. That's the reason why the Bidens were there. That's the reason why Hunter Biden, they wanted the prosecutor fired. They threatened, and he invoked Obama's name. You don't believe me? Just go ask Obama. And so they did. They fired the prosecutor looking into graft and corruption into the Bidens in Ukraine, just off the charts. All right, so the Supreme Court, don't have a lot of time because this was a 4-hour argument yesterday. I would just tell you this idea that they want student loans to be forgiven. He does not have that authority as president and the executive branch. Only the legislative branch has that authority. He can delay it. He can give forbearance, which he's done, but he does not have the power to forgive. Again, we're talking upwards of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars in student loans. And that is something that is argued before the Supreme Court yesterday. And it seemed to me the Supreme Court justices, John Roberts and others, were looking at the fairness argument. So you're telling me that we're going to take students that took out student loans and you're going to forgive $20,000 of taxpayer loans to students, but for somebody that might want to, I don't know, art history major. What are you going to do with that? But somebody that went out and borrowed money to start a small business through using government loans or small business administration, they're not eligible. Is that fair? Is that equal treatment under the law? Of course not. That was Justice Roberts that was making that argument. I don't think it's going to see the light of day. We won't know till maybe June how they're going to rule. But that's another scheme that the Biden administration, I think, is going to be shot down. All we'll wait and see. But outside the court, the radical left was there. Commie Bush, Ilhan Omar, all the usual. Here's Randy Weingarten of the American Federation of Teachers melting down in front of the Supreme Court steps.
As we deal with the end of the pandemic, we're going to deal with that. We're not going to start student debt again without actually making a down payment of it. And the Secretary of Education had the right to do it. And frankly, and this is what really pisses me off, during the pandemic, we understood that small businesses were hurting. And we helped them. And it didn't go to the Supreme Court to challenge it. Big businesses were hurting, and we helped them, and it didn't go to the Supreme Court to challenge it. All of a sudden, when it's about our students, they challenge it, the corporations challenge it, the student loan lenders challenge it. That is not right. That is not fair, and that is what we are fighting as well when we say cancel student debt. This is about the people. And it is about the people's future.
Where do they find these crackpots? I don't know. They are just unhinged. These radical lefties. I mean, they just. I tell you, you can thank Trump for that. The Trump conservative Supreme Court is flushing these people out of the woodworks and the cracks. That was just that was a meltdown for the ages. That was a real good one. I was going to plan on talking about Scott Adams today and that controversy, but. We're kind of running out of time. I want to make sure we do give it due diligence, so we'll do that on Friday, on Friday's episode with Scott Adams, because it's worth talking about. But before we get there, though, I did want to share with you the Canadian Alibaba president, J. Michael Evans. He was at a global economic forum that the globalists are working on something to track everybody in the world. Let's listen to what he said. Again, this is the World Economic Forum. President of Alibaba in Canada, J. Michael Evans.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
And when you'll be using the bathroom.
And that's for our benefit, right?
Yeah.
Joe, you got to cut back on your cabbage.
No, not my cabbage.
Again, you look at it. He's talking about where you shop, what you eat, how you travel, where you travel, what your thermostat is set on, what your ESG score is at your bank. Yes. Maybe we'll do this on Friday as well. The 51 most woke companies in America today. You might be surprised at some of the names that come out of this thing. But again, what happens after the data collection stage? That's where it gets really scary. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, it's for our benefit. Yeah.
Remember the stories of the unjabbed workers in New York City that were their fingerprints were sent to the FBI. So that is just amazing that we would have that going on in the world. But we can stand up. There's still time to fight it, and I would recommend, once again, you contact a member of Congress in order to do so, because that is just amazing to me. All right, so on to our cringe moment of the day, and it is yesterday, or actually it was over the weekend, we heard Joe Biden once again make another racial gaffe. It is where he said to a group of black folks, for Black History Month, I'm a white boy, but I'm not stupid. To me,
you sound stupid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's half right. He is white, but beyond that, there is a treasure trove, and maybe we'll dust this off on Friday. All the racial montages of him saying stuff like, "If you don't vote for me, you ain't black."
Yeah.
Praising Robert Sheets Byrd, calling Barack Obama clean and articulate, saying that he was opposed to integration because he didn't want to create racial jungles. I mean, literally, there's 5 minutes of this stuff that we could play. And he goes, "I'm a white boy, but I'm not stupid." That is just, it's more of the same from this president who does nothing but conquer and divide, or try to divide. And again, I don't think he's capable of conquering anybody, let alone his basement.
I don't know. Let me take you out behind the barn. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Time for our unhinged moment of the day.
Donald J. Trump is now president of the United States.
All right. This, of course, is a member of the Fairfax County School Board. Her name is Abrar Omesh. Abrar Omesh is a Muslim, and she's not just any Muslim. She is a radical Islamic fundamentalist. The fact that she's in America is she's not here for freedom. She's not here for. She's here, as I'm convinced, as a sleeper agent for ISIS or maybe some other. Because listen to what she says regarding this has to do with schools and what holidays they recognize or what holidays they teach in schools. And listen to what she says about one of the most important battles in the history of the United States. It was in the South Pacific during World War II, Iwo Jima. And here is Abrar Omesh.
There's also a lot of history in February. A number of community members reached out to me just a few days ago. Was Japanese Day of Remembrance, something for us to certainly reflect on as we learn our history and think about it. The days when, Iwo Jima unfortunately happened and set a record for really what, I hate to say, human evil is capable of. And so that's something just to remember, especially actually in advance of Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is coming up, and just so many moments for us to think about what human beings are capable of and how we can turn the tide and turn the trajectory to make sure that we're building better.
That is without a doubt the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
The surprise sneak attack on Pearl Harbor where thousands died, some while still sleeping inside the battleship USS Arizona, that wasn't evil to her.
No.
The rape of Nanking, also known as the Nanjing Massacre, wasn't evil. The Bataan Death March wasn't evil. The murder and cannibalism on the Kokoda Track in 1942, that wasn't evil. Conscripting women for sexual slavery in Japanese army brothels, that wasn't evil. The mutilation and murder of Dutch civilians in Borneo wasn't evil. And the murder and cannibalism of captured American pilots was not evil. Or what they did to our pilots in Midway, or the bombing of a hospital ship at Manadunda, the sinking of a hospital ship. Again, hospital ship in Setar. And again, you look at the examination. Look, the Japanese and the Japanese Empire were brutal. It was an evil empire. And it should have been. And look, Fat Man and Little Boy took care of that. Today, they're our friends and our allies. But this is what happens when you have people in our public school system teaching or encouraging this kind of crap. Again, there's a memorial right outside of Washington on Northern Virginia, the Iwo Jima Memorial. Do you realize the worst loss of U.S. Marines in history occurred at Iwo Jima? They had to climb Mount Suribachi. Just like, remember the D-Day cliffs? Yeah. Where a lot of our brave men in arms were gunned down while still in their boats, in the water, on the beaches. Same thing that happened to the Marines. This woman should be run out of this country. And she's got a right to say it under freedom of speech. She ought to be named and shamed than we did. Abrar Omesh, Fairfax County School Board.
Get her out.
Send her a love letter or two.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Okay, our Pockets of Patriots here today. New York still leads in the download arena. And now the top 10, Havre de Grace, Maryland for the first time. So we want to give them a shout out. also Phoenix, Arizona, and West Palm Beach, Florida as well. Thank you for downloading. Don't forget, there's a video version to go along with the audio version. You can catch the video version on both YouTube and Rumble as of this moment. We're still up on YouTube. Fingers crossed. But you never know. And, of course, the audio version wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
Like Gomer Pyle says, subscribe, subscribe, subscribe.
Thank you, sir. And write us at theshawncaseyshow@gmail.com.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction.
All right, that's going to do it for us again on this Wednesday edition. It's Hump Day. We'll be back on Friday with another full episode. Don't forget the Casey commentary on Saturday. Thanks to our executive producer, Joe Hosny-Armacost.
Yeah, see you Friday.
And to our associate producer and researcher, Michelle Drusella, XX.
My pleasure.
And until then, remember to stay free.